coach at brookeboothcoaching.com, where I help people who are in a mixed faith marriage transition all around, the LDS church and that culture, that reality. We're doing a multi-part series on teaching kids in a mixed faith marriage. This is something that a lot of people have a lot of questions on. So I'm doing several series, and in this one, we're going to talk specifically about what to do, like how to tackle what to do when your spouse is teaching or talking about things that you just don't agree with. The best way to handle that. Now, this usually comes up in the context of just about anything. I mean, this can be chastity, modesty, priesthood, leadership, authority, obedience, church history, truth claims, like on and on and on and on. So many areas where we can have disagreement, right? But I've also seen it arise not just on topics around doctrine or around, ideas and claims like that. I also see it around like activity levels, the choices around the activity levels that the children should be in certain programs and how often they should be interacted, and all of this is part of the discussion. So full confession, this happens a lot in this house, right? This is one of those ongoing dynamic things happening in my very own household. My husband has really different views politically, socially, religiously. Sorry about that. And so there's a lot of times where this comes up, and we need to talk about it. We need to figure it out. And I realized recently when I was, my husband was saying something to the kids, I was starting to get on to what my pattern of response was. And I was starting to realize that what tends to get me acting defensive and attacking, or even just feeling annoyed, is when I tell myself that he's confusing the kids. Like, that's something I tend to say to myself that sort of gets this ball rolling, that leads to me acting in ways that I don't like to act, and me showing up in ways that I don't like to show up as I interact with my husband and my kids. And really, when I'm telling myself like he's confusing the kids, it's just the same. It's the I don't like how he's teaching them, and I don't like how he's talking about this issue, church or otherwise, right? And I find what I tend to do when I tell myself, I don't like how he's talking about that, I don't like he's confusing them, whatever it is that I'm telling myself, what I tend to do is I tend to jump in. I tend to jump into the conversation uninvited, and I counter whatever he's saying, I comment on it, I sort of offer, an alternate perspective, which can be a helpful thing, but in this case, I jump in without permission, without a whole lot of grace, without a whole lot of delicacy, and it usually doesn't go well. So that's my pattern, and I'll tell you how I have learned to respond instead. And I offer that to you so you can also start to recognize what your pattern is, so you'll know, recognize when it comes up, so you'll know how to choose your own deliberate response as well. So this is my deliberate response. And this isn't anything I'm doing, in front, like a conversation I'm having with my husband or the kids. That's not what I'm talking about here. This is all internal work. So my deliberate response is very much this internal conversation I have with myself when I start to notice I want to go through this familiar pattern of, thinking he's confusing the kids, jumping in, offering my counter arguments, and usually just sabotaging whatever conversation was just happening. I take a little breath, I step back, and I have this little conversation with myself. And I'm going to give you an idea of what it sounds like. And I'm just talking to myself in my head, in the moment. And I say something like this. You're annoyed because you're thinking he's going to confuse the kids, and that's okay. You think they're going to one day disagree with you and your choice is to step away from the church. Maybe you think that they will walk the same path of you of frustration and conformance, and that'll all be unnecessary. Or maybe you're afraid that you might be wrong and they might be confused with choices that may be challenging to them and challenging to you. It's okay, Brooke, just take a deep breath. He's their father, right? He gets to teach them whatever he wants. I get to teach them whatever I want too, but right now isn't the best time. Right now it's his time to teach and his time to interact, not mine. I have plenty of opportunities to interact and share my ideas and my opinions. I wouldn't even want to counter everything that he has to say. I want to give him that grace, that gift to be a dad. Even if he does counter what I say, I don't want to be the type of person who shows up that way in this marriage and in this family. I don't want to be somebody who creates an us, me versus him dynamic. The kids are not choosing his philosophy or my philosophy, they're choosing their own philosophy. And I want my kids to have lots of different viewpoints presented to them. And that's exactly what's going on here. I want them to think and make their own decisions so that they can, hear out different viewpoints and come to their own understanding and come to their own ideas. And that's what they're able to do here in this family. I want them to have lots of viewpoints presented to them, and that's exactly what's going on. I want them to think and make their own decisions, and they can't do that without understanding and hearing several different viewpoints. Okay, that's an example of a conversation I'll have with myself. And it's this type of conversation is helpful because what it does is it calms me down, right? It calms me down and it prevents me from jumping in and sabotaging what would otherwise be a perfectly enjoyable evening with the family and from ruining the conversation that was taking place. So let me just point out a few key aspects of the little chat I have with myself so you can use it when creating your own little chat that you have with yourself about your own special issues and your own pattern. So one is I acknowledge that we both get to teach whatever we want to the kids. He's just as entitled to that as I am. We're both adults who have that autonomy. I don't want mine hedged, and frankly, I don't want to hedge his. And two, kids are smart. They're smart. They get to make their own decisions anyway at the end of the day, just like I did. Just like I did and just like my husband did. So I just give them that. And three, and this is one I have to get real on, really honest with myself. I answer the question, how do I want to show up in this marriage? And you know what the answer is? It's not as somebody who's petty or tit for tat. I want to be supportive. I want to be generous. And ultimately it comes to I'd rather be happy than right in these situations. And I'd rather have a family that's happy together than feeling attacked or always on the defensive. Okay, so that's what I'm going to offer you when you get in these conversations where you really feel like you need to counter what they're saying or debate what they're saying. You're just so afraid of how to teach the kids. Sometimes the first and most important step is just doing your own inner work, getting yourself to a good place so that when you do teach your kids, you're not doing it out of defensiveness or attack or sabotaging what's happening in your family. You want to make sure you do it from a really clean, loving place. And sometimes this is the pre-work you got to do before you can even go and start thinking about what to teach them and how to teach them. You got to clean up this stuff first. If you need help with this, and a lot of people do, I'm here for you. You might need a coach to really help you pre-pave this and then do the steps beyond and then how to teach them and how to bring up those topics and really work through the things when there really is, differing points of opinion. It's actually really easy to do that when you do the pre-work first. When you get these things figured out, that stuff happens almost naturally and effortlessly. I know. Trust me on this, though. It really does. So if you need a coach, you need to talk to somebody about your mixed-faith marriage and how to deal with the kids stuff, reach out to me and let's talk. Just go to my website, brookeboothcoaching.com, and you'll find a way to sign up for a free call. I offer just a few each month, and you can grab one. We can get on a call and find out what's happening in your marriage and find out if coaching's a good fit for you. All right, wishing you the best.